Amina Niazi grew up in a small, isolated village in West Africa, where life was hard and full of challenges. At a young age, she was left devastated when a tragic fire took away her parents, leaving her with nothing but painful memories. With no family left to turn to, Amina was taken in by her stepmother, Zuri Temba. But Zuri wasn't the kind, loving figure Amina had hoped for. Instead, she was harsh and resentful, making Amina's life even more unbearable. Zuri's cruelty shattered Amina's heart, and instead of giving her the warmth of a new family, she became a constant reminder of the loss Amina had suffered. Despite this, Amina held on to a small spark of hope, a dream that one day she could escape this life of misery. Amina Niazi grew up in a small, isolated village in West Africa, where life was hard and full of challenges. At a young age, she was left devastated when a tragic fire took away her parents, leaving her with nothing but painful memories. With no family left to turn to, Amina was taken in by her stepmother, Zuri Temba. But Zuri wasn't the kind, loving figure Amina had hoped for. Instead, she was harsh and resentful, making Amina's life even more unbearable. Zuri's cruelty shattered Amina's heart, and instead of giving her the warmth of a new family, she became a constant reminder of the loss Amina had suffered. Despite this, Amina held on to a small spark of hope, a dream that one day she could escape this life of misery. Amina's early life was a tapestry of pain and deprivation, woven with the cold threads of her stepmother's cruelty. Zuri, her stepmother, wasn't just a figure of authority in Amina's life. She was a tyrant, a constant reminder of everything Amina had lost. After the tragic fire that killed her parents, Amina had hoped that a new family might offer solace, a safe haven from the world's harshness. Instead, she found herself trapped in a nightmare under Zuri's oppressive rule. Zuri's bitterness, perhaps born from her own bitterness toward life, made Amina's existence unbearable. There was no room for affection in Zuri's house, no space for a child to grow with joy. Every day, Amina felt as if she were walking on eggshells, scared of angering the woman who should have protected her. Zuri's treatment of Amina was beyond harsh. She was systematically stripped of her dignity, her childhood, and the memories of the people she had loved most. The very things that could have been Amina's lifeline, memories of her parents, were destroyed with malice. Zuri took great pleasure in erasing Amina's past, even going as far as burning the photographs of her parents. The mementos that had once held the essence of her family's love, pictures, letters, and small keepsakes, were thrown into the fire, leaving nothing but ashes and smoke. With each piece of Amina's past reduced to cinders, Zuri made sure that no trace of her parents' love would remain. And with that, Amina was left to feel as though her very identity was being erased. As days turned into months and then years, Amina's memories of her parents became a blur, faded beyond recognition. The warmth of their hugs, the sound of their voices, the smell of her mother's cooking, these were all things that once gave her a sense of belonging and safety. But now, those memories felt distant and almost unreachable. Zuri's cruelty was not just physical, it was psychological. She had crafted a reality where Amina could hardly remember the happy moments of her past. It was as though Zuri wanted Amina to forget her roots entirely, to make her feel small and insignificant, as though she were an outsider in her own life. Every day, Amina was made to feel like she didn't belong, not just in the home, but in the world. Zuri constantly reminded her that she was nothing more than an orphan, a burden that had no place in their family. When Amina did find moments of quiet, she would think back to her parents and the life she once had, but the memories were so fragmented that it felt like she was grasping at wisps of smoke. Zuri's constant belittling and manipulation had left Amina feeling empty, stripped of her confidence and her sense of self-worth. Yet despite everything, Amina's spirit wasn't entirely crushed. Deep inside her, there was still a flicker of resilience, a part of her that refused to let go of the hope that one day things would be different. She began to secretly hold onto small things, bits of fabric, old trinkets, and other small items, things that made her feel connected to the world outside of Zuri's control. Even though Zuri's iron grip on her life seemed unbreakable, Amina began to quietly dream of a life beyond the oppressive walls of her stepmother's home. It was as though a tiny seed of defiance had been planted within her, one that would grow stronger as she got older. But for now, Amina was trapped. her life a daily cycle of work and sorrow, always under Zuri's watchful eye, always in fear of her stepmother's next move. It wasn't just the physical work that wore her down. It was the emotional toll of having her past stolen from her piece by piece that truly left her broken. Amina's life under Zuri's control grew more unbearable with each passing day. Every morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, Amina was already hard at work. The endless chores, the back-breaking labor, and the suffocating heat of the remote village were her constant companions. Zuri demanded that Amina work tirelessly, with no time to rest and no time to dream. Amina was responsible for cleaning, cooking, fetching water from the well, and tending to the animals. Every task was done under Zuri's sharp eye, and there was no room for error. If Amina made a mistake, even a small one, Zuri's fury was quick to follow, always making her feel inadequate, like she could never do enough. Zuri's cruelty wasn't just in the work she made Amina do, it was in how she treated her as if she were invisible, as if her needs, her feelings and her dreams didn't matter at all. As Amina carried out her exhausting duties, her body began to weaken. The long hours of hard labor, the lack of food, and the oppressive heat began to take their toll. Yet, her stepmother showed no compassion. There were no breaks, no moments of relief. Zuri's only concern was that Amina completed the chores, no matter how tired or sick she was. Every day was a grueling repetition of the last, a blur of hard work and little reward. Amina's spirit was slowly eroding, but deep down, a fire still burned inside her. She would often find herself staring at the distant horizon, imagining a life beyond the walls of the small, rundown house she was trapped in. She dreamed of a place where she could be free, where she could escape the suffocating control of her stepmother, and where she could reclaim the happiness that had once seemed so far out of reach. But Zuri's grip was unrelenting. No matter how hard Amina worked, no matter how exhausted she became, Zuri's demands only grew. It was as if her stepmother could never be satisfied, as if Amina was just a tool, a machine meant to serve her every whim. Amina's dream of escape seemed impossible. The village was isolated, far from the bustling cities where people could live freely, far from any chance of help or rescue. And yet, Amina clung to that dream, no matter how impossible it seemed. It was the only thing that kept her going, the only thing that gave her the strength to keep working, even as she felt her energy draining away. In the deepest corners of her heart, Amina knew that she couldn't keep living like this forever. She couldn't allow Zuri to take away any more of her life, any more of her soul. She had to find a way out. One fateful day, the tipping point came. Zuri, in one of her violent outbursts, pushed Amina too far. The argument that day had started like so many others, over something small, something trivial. But this time, Zuri's anger went too far. In a fit of rage, she physically hurt Amina, leaving her bruised and broken. It was the final straw. Amina's spirit, which had already been battered for years, could take no more. That night, as she lay in the darkness of her small, cramped room, nursing her wounds, Amina made a decision. She would no longer be a prisoner in her own life. She would no longer let Zuri define her existence. With the last of her strength, she gathered the courage to escape. Under the cover of night, when the village was quiet and Zuri was fast asleep, Amina left the only home she'd ever known. Her heart pounded in her chest, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming feeling of freedom. For the first time in years, she felt like she was in control of her own fate. The thought of what lay ahead was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had no plan, no clear path, but she knew she had to go. She had to leave everything behind, including the toxic grip of her stepmother, if she was ever going to find the life she deserved. With nothing but a few belongings, Amina began the long journey away from the village. She didn't know where she was headed, but it didn't matter. All she knew was that she had taken the first step toward freedom. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in her life, Amina was determined to carve out a future for herself, one where she could finally escape the shadow of Zuri's cruelty and begin anew. After years of unbearable abuse, Amina's breaking point finally came, and it was far more brutal than she could have imagined. One fateful day, after another exhausting round of endless chores, Zuri's temper flared again, but this time, something snapped in her. In a fit of uncontrolled rage, Zuri struck Amina with such force that she was left lying on the floor, gasping for air, bruised and trembling. The pain was sharp, but it wasn't just the physical wounds that hurt. It was the realization that this woman, this cruel stepmother, would never stop tormenting her. Amina had been pushed to the edge, and as she lay there, her mind began to race. She realized that she could no longer live like this. This moment of violence, this outpouring of hatred, was the catalyst for the change she so desperately needed. With the last bit of strength she had, Amina picked herself up, wiping away the tears that threatened to fall. For too long, she had been trapped by fear, by shame, and by the belief that she had no other options. But now, something shifted deep inside her. The pain in her body couldn't stop the rising tide of determination. This wasn't just another day in her painful life. It was the moment she would take control of her own destiny. That night, with no time to waste and no plan in place, Amina made a decision. She was leaving. She was breaking free from Zuri's suffocating grip once and for all. Under the cover of darkness, when the house was silent, Amina packed a small bag, grabbing only the bare necessities, what little she could carry. She knew that if she stayed any longer, she would be destroyed, piece by piece. Her heart pounded in her chest, and every step felt like a leap into the unknown. But she was done with living in fear. She slipped out of the house, her steps quiet but steady as she made her way through the familiar village, now feeling more like a prison than a home. As she walked, she didn't look back. There was nothing left for her in that village. No future in the small, suffocating house she had spent so many years in. Her escape was her only option. Amina's journey led her to Kigalia, a city pulsing with life, energy, and possibility. As she arrived, the contrast to her village was overwhelming. The towering buildings, the bustling streets, filled with people from all walks of life. It was like stepping into a new world. For the first time, Amina felt the rush of excitement, of freedom. The city wasn't perfect, but it was filled with opportunity. She could feel it in the air, in the way people moved with purpose, as if they had a future they could shape for themselves. Amina had no idea where she would go or how she would survive, but the city represented hope, the chance to start over. With nothing but the clothes on her back, Amina wandered the streets, feeling both exhilarated and lost. She found a small, humble neighborhood where she could get a meal and a place to rest. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Days turned into weeks, and though the challenges of the city were tough, new faces, unfamiliar places, and the fear of being alone, Amina began to adapt. She found work in a small local boutique. The woman who ran it was kind, offering her a chance to help with sewing and cleaning. Amina's skill with needles and thread, something she had learned in her childhood, now became her lifeline. It was hard work, but it gave her a sense of purpose, and for the first time in years, she felt proud of herself. The constant worry about survival was still there, but now, Amina had a reason to wake up every morning. The more Amina worked, the more she realized something. She had a talent for creating beautiful things. She began to stitch together unique designs, mixing her African heritage with the vibrant colors and patterns of the city. The world of fashion, something she had never considered, slowly began to unfold before her. She poured her heart into every piece, each creation a reflection of her strength, resilience, and the hope that she had found in her escape. As she worked, Amina dreamed of more, of creating her own clothing line, of becoming a designer who could showcase the beauty of African culture to the world. With every new day in Kigalia, Amina felt a little bit stronger. The city, with its fast pace and diverse people, had become her sanctuary. It was here, away from the shadows of Zuri, that Amina could finally begin to heal, to rediscover herself, and to start building the future she had always dreamed of. This was just the beginning of her new life, a life she was no longer afraid to fight for. The city of Kigalia was alive with color and noise, a place where dreams could either grow or disappear. Amina wandered through the crowded streets, feeling both amazed and overwhelmed. After escaping her painful past, she was finally free, but freedom was not easy. She had no money, no home, and no idea where her next meal would come from. Still, something inside her refused to give up. She carried the heavy weight of her past on her shoulders, but also a spark of hope deep in her heart. As she sat one afternoon on the steps of a busy marketplace, tired and unsure what to do next, her life changed in a way she never expected. Kwame Faye, a respected businessman known for his sharp mind and kind heart, happened to pass by. He noticed Amina right away. It wasn't just her worn-out clothes or tired face that caught his eye. It was the strength he saw hidden in her eyes. Kwame had built his own success after facing struggles of his own, and he knew resilience when he saw it. Something about Amina reminded him of his younger self, lost but unbroken. Instead of walking past like so many others, Kwame stopped and offered her a simple kindness. A conversation. At first, Amina was cautious. Life had taught her that trust was dangerous, but Kwame's voice was calm and sincere, and after a few minutes, she found herself opening up. She told him a little about her story, not all of it, but enough for Kwame to understand the courage it took for her to stand where she was now. He listened carefully, without pity, only respect. He admired her spirit, her will to survive even when everything was against her. He knew she needed more than just sympathy, she needed a chance. Kwame offered her a lifeline. He knew the owner of a small boutique that specialized in handmade clothes, a place always in need of talented hands. When he asked Amina if she could sew, her face lit up for the first time in a long while. Sewing was a skill she had learned in her early years, before life had turned cruel. It was something she loved, but had almost forgotten. She nodded eagerly, and Kwame smiled, telling her he would arrange a meeting. True to his word, Kwame took Amina to the boutique the next day. The shop was small but full of life, with beautiful fabrics hanging everywhere and the steady sound of sewing machines in the background. The boutique owner, impressed by Kwame's recommendation and Amina's quiet determination, decided to give her a chance. Amina couldn't believe it. For the first time since arriving in Kigali, she felt seen, not as a burden, but as someone with something to offer. Amina threw herself into her work. Her hands, though rough from years of hard labor, remembered the delicate dance of stitching and creating. Customers soon noticed the love and detail she put into every piece she touched. Slowly, she began to find her place in this new world. Kwame continued to check on her, offering advice and encouragement, never letting her forget how far she had come. Their bond grew, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of hardship. Through that first encounter, Amina's life had found a new direction, and the dreams she once buried deep inside began to bloom again. Every day that Amina spent working at the boutique felt like a new beginning. With each stitch and design, she found pieces of herself she thought had been lost forever. The city of Kigali, loud and alive, became the place where she could finally breathe freely. As her hands moved across the fabrics, her mind filled with ideas, memories of her village, the colors of the earth, the patterns of the sky, the traditional beauty she grew up around. She realized she didn't want to just sew clothes. She wanted to tell stories through them, stories of strength, culture, and hope. Slowly, Amina began to design her own pieces, combining modern styles with traditional African patterns. She used bold colors, rich textures, and ancient symbols to create something fresh and powerful. Her work spoke to people in a way she had never imagined. Customers started asking for her designs specifically, loving the way her clothes made them feel connected to their roots, yet modern and proud. Each time someone wore one of her creations, it was like they carried a piece of her journey, a silent reminder that beauty could rise from pain. As her confidence grew, so did her dreams. Amina saved every extra coin she earned, spending late nights sketching new ideas, working on her technique, and learning about the fashion business. It wasn't easy. There were days she felt exhausted, days when doubt whispered in her ear, but she kept pushing forward. She remembered the girl who had once been trapped with no way out. She owed it to herself to keep going. She owed it to the dreams she had once been too afraid to speak out loud. Finally, after months of hard work, Amina decided it was time to take a bold step. She launched her own clothing line and named it Niazi Couture. The name held deep meaning for her family name, her true self, her new identity. It was a promise to never forget where she came from and to always honor the strength it took to get where she was now. Niazi Couture quickly captured attention. People loved the way her clothes celebrated African beauty while feeling fresh and modern. Word spread through the city, and soon her small collection turned into something bigger than she had ever dreamed. Amina was no longer just a seamstress. She was a designer, an artist, a woman who had built her own future from nothing but hope and hard work. Every thread, every color, every design carried a piece of her soul, and with every new creation, Amina stitched her place into the world, one beautiful piece at a time. Just when Amina was starting to feel like she had left her painful past behind, life threw her a test she never expected. News of her growing success traveled far, even reaching the small village she had once escaped. It wasn't long before Zuri, her cruel stepmother, arrived in Kigali. She was just the same. Cold eyes, fake sweet words, and the same poison hidden behind her smiles. Zuri didn't come to congratulate Amina. She came with plans to pull her back down, to remind her of the control she once held. When Amina first saw Zuri standing outside her boutique, it felt like the air had been punched out of her chest. For a brief moment, she was that scared little girl again, trapped and powerless. But something was different now. Amina was not the broken girl Zuri had tried to destroy. She was a woman who had built her own life, one filled with dreams, hard work, and respect. Still, Zuri tried to creep back into her life, speaking softly about family and forgiveness, pretending that the years of cruelty never happened. She offered Amina a twisted deal: leave this busy, unfamiliar city and return to the village, where family should stay together. She spoke about how Amina's success was meaningless without her roots, without the people who raised her. For a moment, Amina listened in silence, feeling the old anger and sadness swirl inside her. But then she looked around. She saw the boutique she had worked so hard to build, the clothes that carried her dreams, the young women she had started to inspire. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one Zuri had tried to break, and she realized something powerful. She didn't owe Zuri anything, not forgiveness, not loyalty, and certainly not her future. With a calm strength that surprised even herself, Amina rejected Zuri's offer. She spoke clearly, without anger, but with firm resolve. She thanked Zuri, not for the pain she caused, but for forcing her to become strong. Then she told her she would never go back. She had fought too hard for her freedom, and she would never let anyone, not even family, take it from her again. As Zuri walked away, full of anger and disbelief, Amina felt something inside her settle. For the first time, she truly understood her own worth. She was free, and no one could ever cage her again. Zuri's rejection did not end things. Instead of disappearing, she let her anger grow into something even more dangerous. She could not accept that Amina had broken free from her control, so she began to spread lies around Kigali. She whispered to customers and important people in the fashion world, telling them that Amina was dishonest, that she had stolen her designs, that she was not the good person everyone believed she was. Some people started to doubt, others kept their distance, and for a moment, it felt like the walls Amina had worked so hard to build were starting to crack. Amina felt the pressure closing in, but she did not run this time. She remembered all the nights she cried alone, all the battles she had fought to stand where she was now. She knew that if she let fear control her again, everything she had built would fall apart. So, instead of hiding, she decided to face the storm head-on. Amina gathered her team and her customers, and without anger or bitterness, she told her true story. She spoke about her journey, her struggles, her dreams, and the meaning behind every piece she designed. She let people see the real her, the strong woman who had survived the worst and turned it into something beautiful. People listened. They saw the truth in her eyes and the honesty in her voice. They realized that no amount of lies could erase the heart and soul Amina put into her work. Slowly, trust returned, stronger than before. Customers came back, friends stood by her side, and her boutique began to shine even brighter. Zuri tried again and again to break her, but Amina stayed firm. She understood now that Zuri's power over her was gone. Her stepmother's words could no longer reach the woman Amina had become. Amina was no longer living in the shadows of her past. She had her own light now, and no one could take that away. Standing tall in the face of betrayal, Amina realized she had truly won, not just over Zuri, but over the fear and pain that had once ruled her life. She was free, she was strong, and she was ready to keep rising, no matter what challenges came her way. Even with all the lies and trouble Zuri tried to cause, Amina's light only grew stronger. Word about her talent spread beyond Kigali. Her designs, filled with vibrant African traditions and a deep story of strength, caught the eyes of powerful people in the fashion world. More and more people wanted to wear her clothes because they felt connected to something real, something powerful. Amina's name became known not just for beautiful clothes, but for the beautiful soul behind them. Her boutique was no longer just a small shop. It was becoming a symbol of courage, resilience, and hope. But Amina didn't forget where she came from. She remembered the lonely nights, the fear and the feeling of having no one to turn to. She thought about the many girls who, like her, were trapped in pain, dreaming of freedom, but not knowing how to find it. Amina knew she had to do something more with her success. She wanted her journey to mean something greater than just fame. With her growing influence, Amina started a foundation dedicated to helping young women who had escaped abusive situations. She created a safe space where they could heal, learn new skills, and build new lives, just like she had. She offered training in sewing, designing, and business, teaching them that their pasts did not define their futures. Amina became a mentor, a guide, and a living example of what was possible when you refused to give up. The foundation quickly became known as a place of hope and transformation. Women who once felt invisible now found their voices. They stitched their pain into art, turning their suffering into strength, just as Amina had done. Every success story that came from the foundation made Amina's heart fuller. It wasn't just about fashion anymore. It was about changing lives. Through it all, Amina stayed humble and true to herself. She wore her scars like medals, proud of how far she had come. She had turned her deepest wounds into bridges for others to cross. No matter how high she climbed, she never forgot the little girl who once dreamed of escape. And now, because of her, so many others could dream too, with open eyes, strong hearts, and the belief that no one could ever dim their light again. Amina had spent years running from her past, carrying the weight of old wounds like invisible chains. But now, standing in the middle of her boutique, surrounded by bright fabrics and even brighter faces, she felt something she had never felt before. Peace, the anger, the sadness, the fear that Zuri and the past had planted in her heart were finally fading. They no longer had power over her. Amina understood that her pain had shaped her, but it did not define her. She chose to bury the hurt, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the strength it had given her. Her hard work paid off in ways she had once only dared to dream about. Amina was invited to showcase her designs at one of the most prestigious fashion events in Africa. The night of the event, the air buzzed with excitement. Bright lights, flashing cameras, and a sea of important faces filled the grand hall. But Amina wasn't nervous. She stood backstage, her heart calm and strong, her hands steady. When her collection hit the runway, it was more than just beautiful clothes. It was her story stitched into every seam, a story of survival, of hope, and of unbreakable spirit. The audience was captivated. Every piece told a story of her journey, and every model who walked wore not just fashion, but a piece of Amina's heart. When the final model stepped off the runway and the applause filled the room, Amina knew this moment was bigger than any fame or fortune. It was proof that dreams built on pain could bloom into something breathtaking. But Amina's dreams didn't stop with her own success. She made it her mission to pass down everything she had learned. She spent her time mentoring young women who had once felt powerless, just as she had. She taught them not just how to sew or design, but how to believe in their own worth. She shared her story, her struggles, and her victories, turning every scar into a lesson of hope. In every young woman who found her voice through Amina's foundation, her legacy lived on. Amina Niazi was no longer just a survivor. She was a creator of futures, a builder of dreams, and a symbol of strength for generations to come. Her light, born from darkness, would shine forever, lighting the way for others who needed to find their own.